we begin.
Okay, good.
Yep.
This one is recording too? Both of them?
No. Yes.
So, we'll have a selection of things to discuss. Anything that else you might think about is part of the game. So I will try to cover these points, questions you've asked already. But maybe I could start with my own question. Because I have a question. What are the questions that I live with? And we were just talking about that before you two came in. So, there are three components of the Gnostic knowledge. Three basic components. There's the narrative or the sacred story. There's the description of the organic light. And there's the method, the telepstic method, which is called instruction by the light. Okay? So, you all know what these are. And so you belong to an elite group of people on the planet who know what these are. And before this time now, 21st century, no one, if you were not an initiate, no one knew that. No one publicly knew those three things. Did you realize that? It was not a public matter of public knowledge. So, for instance, as I explained, it's kind of hard to get your mind around that fact, but it's a very big fact. As I explained, well, just take them one at a time. Each one of these parts of the Sophianic way of life has come into our world now. How can you say how many people have encountered it? I don't know. How many people have found it? How many people have recognized it? I don't know. But it's in the world. It's in the outer world. And so the questions that I live with are what's going to happen to it? What is going to happen? So, take them one at a time. Well, there's the Sophianic story, the myth. Well, probably that's the easiest one. Because it is a story, and as people learn the story and tell the story, it will spread, and it's a very beautiful story. And as you probably know, the strong factor that brings people to my work and brings people to Planetary Tantra is that story. It is the beauty of that story that just blows people away. So that story and the beauty of the story will spread. And it will spread from one person to the next. And there are many ways of spreading it too, So I was just looking at an outline that I have. And I think I listed 12 different ways to spread and develop the Sophianic story. And that's just a partial list. So there's through theater, there's through film, there's a book for children under 8, there's a book for children under 15, there's a documentary, there's a movie called Lydia's Vow, which I am writing. And so it's vast and it's spreading. And everyone takes what they want to. You take it upon yourself. You can give yourself the assignment of developing a story. So that doesn't bother me so much. I'm okay with that. The next comes, the organic light. Okay. What can you say? if you investigate the ancient sources, the Greek text, the Latin text, you have to go into many different areas. So say you're like a detective and you want to go into the ancient writings and find any clues about the organic light. Okay? You can find them. And you can put them all on one sheet of paper. That's how many of them survive. For instance, sometimes you have to go to the heresy hunters, the people who hated the Gnostics and persecuted them, did preserve certain aspects of Gnostic knowledge, right? I call that the case for the prosecution, right? So those who were attacking the Gnostics learned some things about the Gnostic schools and they preserved them in those writings. So if you go to, for instance, I think it's Irenaeus, I'm not sure, or it might be Epiphanius, and you find in that, this is not the direct words of the Gnostics themselves, you understand? It's the words of the people who were attacking them. They said, they claim that there is a light that casts no shadow. Now you can actually find this. You can actually find those words. There is a light that casts no shadow. The organic light casts no shadow. So, the evidence is there. Just one page of evidence out of all of the ancient writings of the world. That's how much you have. Now, in that evidence, you can find just a few indications. Like in the Gnostic, in the Nag Hammadi, it says, I think it's in, I can't remember which one it is, paraphrase of Shem maybe. It says, the light was full of hearing and language. Now this is exactly true. When you experience the organic light, it is full of hearing and language. It's like you're in a chamber with the light and you can hear in a different way than you normally hear. You can hear the voice of the earth. You can hear the voice of the pleroma. And there is language. It speaks to you in language, and it will speak to you in any language in the world. It speaks to you in Swedish, Norwegian, Chinese, Japanese, Spanish. Why? Because that is the source of your capacity to have language. So obviously it can speak to you in any language. You see? So you'll find these remarkable clues. And as you know, you find them in Nadine's image, But then when you compare that with what I've said about the organic light openly, there's really no comparison. I have written pages and pages about it, describing it in vivid detail. The texture of it, the way that the light comes on, the way that the various ways that it behaves like an animal. It's alive, and it behaves like an animal. And I have given probably dozens and dozens of details of the organic light. This was strictly forbidden to do. The reason why we only have this record is, two reasons. One is because most of the original Gnostic material was destroyed. Okay? And I'm talking about millions of essays, and not millions of books as such. In that time, they would call an essay a book. So if you wrote if there was a 4 or 5 page essay about the moon, that would be called a book. But there were millions of these, and they destroyed them all. So that's one reason why you don't have. But the main reason why you don't have any evidence of the properties and behavior of the organic light is because they were forbidden to describe it. And the reason for that is very simple. If I give you a preconception of something, then that will affect your ability to approach it. You know, we experience this all the time. You know, to take one, you know, really take a couple of examples. Suppose you decide to go on a vacation to Bali, okay? And so you just read all about Bali, you know, and you get all these tourist books. But then when you get to Bali, it's like, you know, it's not what you expected, right? It still may be very beautiful, but because you bring a preconceptions to it, you cannot totally experience it in its purity. So this is why they did not describe it beforehand. Okay? So I took the risk to describe it all beforehand. Yeah. This is what I've done. Yeah. This has never been done before. The second factor there is that when you have any expectation of it at all, it makes the perception of it more difficult. Because, see, we're in the organic light right now. And you could see the organic light right now if you had a subtle way of seeing it. It's very subtle. It does, when you see it, it's absolutely overwhelming and it comes over you like a massive wave. But at the moment you detect it, it's very subtle. It's very paradoxical, isn't it? It's like you don't suddenly go, oh, there it is, you know. You see it like that in a very subtle way. And then when you see it, it starts to come onto you. And it comes onto you as far as you can handle it. Yeah. How much beauty can you take? So this is how that experience stands today. And we were talking about this before you came in. I said, I don't know what to say. I think that maybe I've said it all. You know, this statement I consider. So I've said many things about the quality and properties of the organic light. And by the way, if what I said is true, and it's not just some fantasy that I have, then how can we know it's true, right, what I said? It's simple, because everybody experiences the same thing. No one experiences the organic light on your own. You don't go off and on a trip and have your own personal thing with it. It's so far beyond the personal that everyone experiences it in the same way. So, for instance, the nose drop. This is absolute reality that everyone will experience. It's invariable. That when you get to a certain closeness into the light, and the light is a living entity and it's feeling you, and when she feels you and she likes what she feels, you get a drop of mucus in your nostril. This is how precise it is. And I have seen people get that, so I know. So all the elements are there to recognize if this experience is correct. You know, I'm happy to say that I've provided that. But at the end of all of that, and the melon texture on your skin, I mean, these things are totally sublime, you know. Think of cool melon. Think of taking a slice of cantaloupe that's just slightly cool, putting it on your skin. This is actually how it feels. See? So I'm happy to have described all that. But I think at the end of the day, what has to be said about the organic light is that the earth is a luminous body. Yeah. And that the emanation of the earth is a pearly white, living, substantial radiance. And you have to say it over and over and over again. And then people can deal with it however they can. What do you mean? The Earth is a radiant body, The sun is radiant and the star, what are you talking? That's the place to start. That's the place to begin, to say, oh, did you know that there was someone and he was, a mystic, and he claims that the Earth is a radiant body and that everyone can see this radiance. That's the place to start. If you talk with anyone about it, talk about that. Introduce it in that way. Okay? So I entrust you with all of that, and I feel pretty good about that too. The thing that I can't work out is how to do the telepstic method with people in groups or in individuals. I just can't work out the best way to do it. We were talking about that just before you came. So I was saying that now that I live in Galicia, as long as we have this house, I don't know how long we'll have this house. We're just renting it. But it is a really elegant house. It's all made of gray granite. When you see it from a distance, it looks so weird. It looks like a tomb or a vault. It looks like a vault.
Exactly.
It looks like a vault. Yeah. Yeah. And it is a vault. Because it has the Turton's treasures in it. It has all my books, my files, everything there, where I live, yeah. So there's room for people to come there and stay. So there are two possibilities. One is that individuals or couples would come and stay with me, and that together we would do the telepstic method of the mysteries. Okay? The other possibility is the group thing, which we have done. And Daniel has participated. So I led two shamanic groups, two shamanic sessions. One in Galicia in May of 2015, and the other one in Andalusia in November of 2015. And they were both, I would think I could say they were both completely successful.
They were very successful.
Yeah. And the reason why they were successful is because there was a Nahual there. There has to be a guide, because people, you can't handle it, believe me. You really, it's more than you could ever imagine. The physical impact on your body is stunning. And it's ecstatic. But you have to, what's the word, Hans? You have to know how to hold that ecstasy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And you can't lose your mind, and you can't go off onto some... No, you have to be right there. So my role as a Nahual was to keep everyone together. I made that very clear, didn't I?
Yeah. Just to keep everyone stable was I think that would be the main thing of it. And also to guide people.
To cue.
Yeah, to cue.
Yeah. The Nahual cues to the power of the light, because the Nahual will see the light before anyone else. They'll see how she comes. Like up in Galicia, she came from the north. And everyone was looking south at that moment, strangely enough. Because we took the mushrooms, and then there's the moment when the rush comes on,
It went very fast.
It went quite fast, So there were about 10 people there, and so I gave them the protocols. And the protocols are always the same. One protocol is you stand up, you keep your eyes open. Second protocol is you do not hallucinate. This is hard, because people will start hallucinating, especially when you're looking at the clouds. Do not hallucinate. Third protocol is you stay with the group. Nobody walks off. Don't go do your own thing. And they were really good. But everyone was looking south, and then I realized, she's breaking from the north. Because the light, the organic light is everywhere. It comes out of material mass. It radiates out of mass. Everything floats in it. This whole forest, this house is floating in it right now. It's difficult to see in the daytime. They always celebrated these rites at night. Why is that? Because in the daytime you have a second light, which is the light that's created in the atmosphere by the sun. And that second light is completely different from the organic light. And because you tend naturally to be, your attention is captured by that light, obviously, it's harder to see the organic light. So that's why we do it at night. At night you can see it. It comes out of things. Okay. So, but because it is everywhere, you need the skill of the Nahual to know how that animal behaves, how she behaves. And in that session at Yolanda's, it was really beautiful because that was Yolanda's house. We were on the lawn. It was just before twilight. The sky was very beautiful blue. And over to the one side of the house were these pine trees, this forest of these pine trees with these very jagged peaks. So I told the group to do something which is typically what the Nahual will do. Because the Nahual, the role of the Nahual is to steady the approach to the unknown and to provide syntax. Syntax means a description that guides you to the experience. Right? So I said, look at the trees. And look at where the trees, it was starting to get dark. Look at where the pine trees reach up and where they reach the sky, the blue of the sky. Don't hallucinate, don't stare. Just look softly at where the tops of the trees meet the blue of the sky, right? And that is how you capture the approach of the light. Okay? And at that moment, I thought it was going to approach over the trees because it was starting to, I saw some action there. But then at a certain moment, and that was spectacular. I don't know how it happened in your session, but that was so spectacular. The way that the light broke from the north. It was like, and it was so fast, wasn't it? It was just like, and after 10 seconds, we were all in it. And it's different every time. So that you need to have the guide of the Nahual until you yourself know how to sense how it's coming. You need to be guided into it, you see. So that's a problem because, to do that with a group today involves a lot of organization. They have to come where I am, and from all parts of the world. It's a long journey. It's expensive. And ideally, I would say, if I was going to do a group again, and I don't know if I'll ever do one again, honestly, I would think it's going to take 3 weeks. They have to be there for 3 weeks.
For preparation,
yeah,
debriefing, and
there's a pre-briefing and then there's a debriefing. So we don't have the privilege they had in the mystery cells where they would debrief for months. And they had a beautiful system whereby if 8 people in a mystery cell went into a shamanic trance together, this was called theurgia. Theurgia in Greek. Theurgia means, theos means divine, and urgia means a working or an operation. So it's a divine operation. They would do a theurgia together. So if they went into a theurgia to have instruction by the light, they were sensitive enough in their practice to know, it's Lydia this evening. Or it's this person over here who is the first one to get onto the light. And so they all join around that person. And generally there will be one who gets the biggest download. And then everyone else helps to process that download. So when you come out of the session, when they would come out of the cell, 2 or 3 or 4 days later, they would be back in their little temples. And they would say, okay, we know we did this session 5 nights ago, and Lydia was the one who got the main download, and now we're all going to process what Lydia got. This is how it was done. How are we going to do this today? See? I don't know. I don't know how to recreate it. This is the big question for me. How to recreate the telestic learning experience, in the conditions of the times. And I'm not asking for anyone to give an answer, because there is no answer. It's just going ahead. This is something to work out. One thing I will say, and I'm glad I can say this for the record, in case anyone gets any funny ideas, but I don't advise anyone to do what I did, which is do it alone. Because I did it alone in Spain for many, many times, And I would say you can do it alone or with a partner once in a while, but do not repeatedly do it alone. Don't. Because it's just, I honestly don't know how I didn't go insane from doing it alone. I used to go up on the ridge and have the most sublime experiences up there. I mean, full-blown conversation with her. After March, it started in March of 2003. That's when I got my first, that's when I knew I was talking to her. And she was talking to me. That's when I said, I asked her to give me her instructions. And what she said. Make yourself comfortable and watch your boundaries. That's her only instructions. That's it. She has no laws. She has no big rules to give you. That it? Yeah, that's it. Okay. So then I realized that by talking to her, and she was still autistic then. She's not autistic now. There's been a big change.
Yes.
Since reset, she's come out of her autism. So she was very autistic, and I learned how to talk to her. I learned, for instance, that I had to talk to her, ask her a very precise question. I couldn't just, say, well, what about this, and what's going to happen to humanity, I had to, she's like a scientist, It's like an autistic child. If you can break into an autistic child, that, first of all, is very difficult. But if you could break into their mind, you have to ask them something that's very, very specific, because their mind is so concentrated. You know about how this is, because you work with them. So there I was, learning all this and discovering all this. I mean, it was so utterly fantastic. Just felt like the most fortunate person in the world, I can tell you. But when I would come down from there, it was rough. Yeah. Because where do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I say? And I had no one to debrief me except my cats.
Yeah, I see.
My animals, my Nikita. Yeah. Without those animals, I don't know what I would have done. Yeah. So that's the problem with taking it alone. If you're good at it, you're going to get intel. And you cannot keep this intel to yourself. It's too wonderful and too profound and beautiful. But then, how are you going to share it? See what I mean? So that's the question that remains.
So the debriefing is extremely important.
Very, very important. Yeah. And
how so? Why is this important, do you think? Is it because you cannot go with it alone? It's not meant for you to go with it alone.
You're logging on to the aeonic mind. She's an aeon, but she's not human. Even though she's the mother of humanity, she is not human. You have to keep this in mind. She's not human. We talk about her in human terms and we say she, and we joke around because that's the only way we can communicate it, you know. But she's not human. It's the aeonic mind. And you don't have an aeonic mind, you know. So you get more than your mind is designed to handle. And that's why you have to debrief and you have to share it with people.
Yeah, there are things you can do by yourself, but this is big.
Yeah.
You need to share it with other people.
It's too big for you. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say occasionally, sure, I'm not an authority. I know the longing to have this experience must be very great in people who hear about it, you know. Obviously, of course. Also, as a final point, I need to add that after much reflection, I'm convinced that there is a certain element of grace in the encounter with the organic light. You know, I don't know how you translate that, but in religious language, something is just called an act of grace. You know, like people have brain tumors, right? And then suddenly they get healed, right? Yeah. And they say, oh, by the grace of God, or however you would express it, you know. Well, there is an act of grace. And no one can absolutely say if you're going to be able to meet this light or not. It's really not. There's no guarantee that you can. It's a combination of an act of grace and skill.
Yeah,
that's it.
Attention.
Yeah, and your attention. You have to have the skill and the poise, and then we'll see. So, how's that sound so far, Hans?
That sounds absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to say something, because when I experienced what I experienced last year, it was not a download. It was a beingness, you know. She was there, and it was the space, and space is beingness for me, you know. So so you know, the thing is, Sophia, that is wisdom, and wisdom has no memory, okay? So I have no, as you see, I cannot explain anything. I just experienced her beingness there, you know. And from the moon, there was kind of a moonshot right into my heart, you see. So I'm so in love with her, and I express my love when I hug you, you know, because I love you so much. Through her. I don't know if I'm kind of silly talking like that, but that's how it is with me. I'm totally lost.
It's obvious.
And I'm only 9 years old. You know, so yeah, that is with me. And I really want to do it once more so I am very, very curious about the Nahual, because I was in the Nahual. I don't know what that is, but yeah. Fantastic. And Gaia was there, you know. Oh, the nature was dancing, you know, and coming very close and come to me, you know. Yeah, I will die in your arms.
Yes,
when I'm dying, I will die in your arms. You know?
That's right.
Then I'm no more, and I'm all.
That's right.
That's how I see it, you know. It's kind of weird.
In the record, in that one page of remaining record of the mysteries, that is exactly what they say about the Eleusinian mysteries. Testimony from the Eleusinian mysteries, right? Exactly what they say. You know, this feeling of it's just so awesome. It's just so awesomely vast. You know, we know we're living on a planet, right? And we know that it's a huge planet. It's bigger than you can ever conceive, but we really don't know until you're really in the presence of it. And when you're in her presence of the light, you're in the presence of the totality of it. And the secret is to surrender, and you let it go through you. It just like pours right through you. And then you get to a point where you are in that flow with her. That's the peak of the trance. And that's where you get the intel. Blessed is he who goes beneath the earth, having seen these things. This is a Greek poet Pindar, who was initiated at Eleusis. When he says beneath the earth, what he means is that you go into the earth, because the organic light comes out of the earth. Right? It's a radiation of the earth. So if you go into the light, you go into the earth. You see? Blessed is he who goes beneath the earth, that is, beneath the external appearance. Right? Having seen these things, he knows the end of life, and he knows its divine beginning as well.
Yes.
Simple.
That's true. That's true.
So finally, I would respond to what Daniel was saying. Well, maybe the way to go is for me to train people. Like anything else. Yeah?
But how, this sounds like a very good idea, but can anyone become a Nawab?
No.
There you go. So, if I want to be like, I really want to, but if you don't have the talent, how can you do it?
You can't.
No, that's...
So if you really want, first of all, you can have the desire to do it, and the will to do it. Well, that's already part of the agreement. Okay, fine. Then I would have to just interact with the person, and I would have to make an evaluation.
Yes. Yes.
Because there are things that you learn. The Nawal has, I can tell you, but I have 100 tricks. The tricks of commanding the light. You actually command the light. This is what it's about.
Because you are born with it. It's not something you learn from a book.
No, I didn't learn it. I learned it from encountering her.
Yes.
But I had the ability to do that, like people have the ability to act, people have the ability to sail, to sing, whatever.
Yes,
it's
a talent.
So it has to be someone who has the innate ability to become naqual, as the Mexicans say, the naqual. So and I'm open to do that. I am.
It's going to be a hard work.
How does it work in Mexico? The brujery.
It always worked the same way.
Yeah, it's the same way.
They take years to train an apprentice.
Yeah, to find someone to train it. Yeah, exactly.
No matter what you think of Castaneda, his record is absolutely accurate. Look at the first book. You see in the first book how skeptical they are about him, right? So he meets Don Juan, and he's sitting around with these old guys out by some house out in the mountains in Sonora. He doesn't really know what's happening. They're all looking at him very, very closely, and they're testing him. Remember, Don Juan tests him when they're sitting on the porch of that house, on the patio, and Don Juan says, "Well, you can't just sit anywhere." And Carlos says, "Well, what do you mean?" And he says, "Well, you have to find your spot. We are all sitting in our spot. You don't know that, but we sit in a particular... And you just can't sit down anywhere, so you have to find your spot, remember? And I think the dog helped him to find his spot. Oh, yeah. Remember that?
Yes.
So this is real. This is absolutely... And they put people through extensive training. So a curandera like Maria Sabina would have to train someone for years, So I think that the telestic method is different. I think it can be transmitted more rapidly. But it does require me working with someone very closely. And I've noticed, I've tried to do it a little bit. I've tried to do it on some occasions. Like we were up at Witch Haven in November, and I was with 3 other people. And I felt very comfortable because they're my close friends. And we all love each other and we're all in planetary tantra together, But none of them is a nawal. So I said, well, I'll show them some tricks, because there are procedures, there are things that you do, like mudras are really important. So there are certain kind of mudras that you use.
Mudras is
hand movements, right?
movements,
Yeah, and you command the light with your hands and with your eyes. There are certain eye movements that you can do. Yeah. You were doing it. I can see it. I can see it. He's a natural.
He's always doing this with his hands,
Amazing.
Don't you understand what I mean?
He's doing mudras all the time.
No, I don't know.
Good. Like one wonderful technique is comparable to signing, which is what you do with people who are deaf mutes. You sign, Well, if you want to communicate with the Aeon Sophia, you find, I discovered this on the ridge, much to my delight, that she really likes signing. So, one day I was up there, completely blasted on mushrooms, of course, and I realized that, because I just discovered these techniques spontaneously, as you do in any field of life, right? So, I knew, just absolutely knew, that she would respond, that I could communicate to her like someone doing sign language for someone who can't speak. You see them do that.
It's a language.
Yeah, it's a language,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
And this, you do letters and you do these various things, right? So, but then I realized something else. I realized that I have to know exactly what I want to say. So I was walking around up there, sitting by the Devi tree, looking at my cordings and forming in my mind a very precise sentence, just one sentence that I wanted to say to her, of maybe 15 words.
Wow.
And I worked it over again and over again and over again until it was absolutely crystal clear sentence. And then I took that sentence out of my head and I brought it down to here and I held it right there and then I signed it. I gave it to her in sign language. And the response was tremendous. You see? It was like, she understood perfectly. And she answered and responded to my sentence. So that's one of the tricks of the Nawal. It's a method. So that's what I would teach someone who would come. And training, that's the old way. Why not? Why shouldn't it, be appropriate for this? But again, the conditions are critical. The conditions are critical.
But when you look at Castaneda, isn't it like, because he's going through a process with them in the books, and isn't it about him facing, like surrendering? That's the main thing for him. And also to learn, of course, the skills of peyote and how to deal with that. But I'm thinking about when people surrender.
Well, surrender is essential, and surrender, it's like sex.
I was thinking
It
about,
really is, man.
did you say orgy? Theorgy?
Yeah, theorgia.
It's like orgy, okay.
Yeah,
Theo
it's like sex.
divine.
And many people can't surrender in sex, you know that. Either the male or the female.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
that? Because if I surrender too much when I have sex, I come immediately.
Right.
There is also this, I have encountered the light without knowing that it wanted to kiss me. And I was totally sober. I was at this lake and there was these swans and they were like kissing each other like this, and then she came onto me very hard. And the ecstasy was so strong, so I didn't know if is this something that I should contain, or should I let it just flow through? And I don't know still how to handle it.
That's right. That's right.
It blows my socks off.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Well, you're already doing great, because you have had this experience spontaneously. And by the way, people do. People do encounter the light, organic light, without even knowing it. And this is good. This is good. This means that you are already on the way to the light. Okay. But remember again, the role of the Nawal is what? To steady the approach to the unknown and to provide syntax. So you need the Nawal to tell you how to handle it and to slow you down. And you stay in that state of surrender, but you can't give yourself up in that state of surrender too soon. You see? So it's a delicate and subtle things that you learn. You see? And it's best to learn them from somebody who already has them.
Yeah, I experienced the same. It's interesting what you say, because it's both in a way. It's like you give yourself, but you don't lose it at the same time. That's my experience when it's similar to sex, like you say.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
You have to stay with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to flow with it.
Yeah.
You
just give up, then you come.
Yeah.
But it's not really that. It's like trying to be sober at the same time.
I want to say something also that happened last year regarding mudras, because I did it spontaneously and it was more intensifying. She was even more there, I did it spontaneously. It's incredible. What can I say? It's just, I feel stupid also, kind of, because I cannot verbalize it for your mind, you see?
No one can. It's beyond verbalization.
I just express it through my heart, because I have so much love, I have had all my life. And I have frightened people with my love. Especially women.
Pretty terrifying. Yeah.
Too much. And I didn't understand. I was very unlucky. For many, many, many years. I wanted to die. Many years. Now I know how to do it.
You do die. You die in this experience.
Oh,
but
yeah.
then you really know what it is to be alive. It's like you die and you survive.
Yeah.
That's why this quotation says, and the Gnostic text also says this. It says, well, you're not going to know what it is to survive after death unless you have it before you die. This is one of the most profound statements that you can ever hear. Most people put it to a matter of faith. Their religion tells them, well, you will survive after death, right? And they say, okay, well, great, now I feel better. But the Gnostics said, no, you can have that experience of surviving after death before you die. Then it's a certainty. You see?
Doesn't Rumi say that as well?
Rumi. Yes, I
Or
believe so.
die before you die.
Yeah, I think certain mystics have said that. So there are tricks, and there are consistent and reliable actions that you take, like the mudra, like sounds you can make sounds. Like there are certain sounds or notes that you make that absolutely excite the earth. They excite the Nawal. I was doing this. I think we did this when you were there.
Yes.
And we were on the terrace, and I made the snake noise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also the E.
Yeah, and the hard E.
The hard E.
Yeah.
And
How does that?
It's hard to. It's not easy to repeat it when you're not in that condition. The snake noise resembles the songs of the ayahuasqueros. ayahuasqueros. Well, if you do ayahuasca correctly and you have a guide who is the ayahuasquero, they sing through the session and they play little instruments, which may be a flute or a little stringed instrument, and they sing these songs. What, Icaros?
Icaros.
Yeah, they sing these songs called Icaros, and they're chants, and they're kind of in a high voice, right? Kind of like a bird song, chant. Well, that is one of the techniques for guiding you into the Nahual, because the group of people who are in the ayahuasca trance, when they hear that, it puts them on the right frequency with the spirit, with the power of the plant.
Pachamama.
Yeah, with Pachamama. Sachamama, Pachamama, right. We call Udasi in planetary tantra. Udasi. And the snake sound is really fun to make. And the snake sound, it's just fantastic because you can actually, the trees and the plants actually respond to it.
There were some moments when we did the session, we could hear her growl.
Growl, yeah, that's right.
And yeah, it's also the movements of the earth is, you can see her movements. It's like a snake. I don't know if you experienced that, or anyone else here. I don't know, but that is that I've seen so many times.
You're lucky. It's good you bring that up. That is something that I've had sessions with people, because people did come to see me in Andalusia during those years, and I took some of them up on the ridge or up behind my house. I warned them, I warned them in the best way I could that they were going to have an overwhelming experience, and just don't freak out. And if you get afraid, just tell me, because there's nothing to be afraid of, and I know exactly how to handle fear, like that. But they didn't. They got afraid and they freaked out. And one thing that makes people really afraid is when you see the earth move like a snake.
Yes, yes.
And some people just vomit. They spontaneously throw up, or they go into a fetal position. I went up behind my house one time with someone, and I warned her. I just said, look, this is what's going to happen, and be prepared, and if you need any help, just tell me. And she started to see that as the trance comes on, the surface of the earth starts to move. It's like the body of a living animal. You realize it's breathing. The whole planet is breathing. It's like an amoeba. And you can see it. And it affects you. Really affects you, doesn't it? And she said, happened to be a woman, she said, what'd she say? I think there's some fierce spirit out there, and it's coming after me. So I said very calmly, we don't say spirit. You say there's a force. You're seeing a force, right? She says, yeah, it's a force. It's really strong, and it's coming after me. And it's going to eat me. And I said, yes, that's right. It is. It's going to devour you. You just don't worry, you'll survive, but just let it devour you. And she couldn't handle it. She was just too scared. So she ran down and left him. She ran in the bedroom and she buried herself in the covers in my bedroom. So I came down and I had prepared this huge thermos of mushrooms, and we'd only drank about half of them. The really long ones, the really powerful ones. So I came down, sitting in the kitchen in my little house. She's hiding in the bedroom under the covers. And I'm sitting there. Oh well, may as well enjoy myself. So I opened up a bottle of really good Spanish wine, and I poured all of the mushrooms in it. And I sat there and I drank it for about an hour. Oh man, it was so good. So I'm sitting there in the kitchen, like, talking to Nikira, the Nahual's life is sweet. And I'm looking at the bedroom door and thinking, I wonder what this crazy bitch is going to say when she comes out of the bedroom. What's the first thing that she's going to say? And just sitting there, you know, really very, very high. Very high. And so I hear her moving around in there, and you know, she opens the door, she stands there, and she says, I'm dying for a fag.
Fag?
A cigarette.
Oh, cigarette.
Okay.
I'm dying for a fag. Some people just don't have they just don't have it.
No.
But it isn't. That is the experience. You feel like she's eating you alive.
Yeah, and she does eat you alive. You know,
Tasting you.
she's tasting you.
But it can be also depends on the time you try it. I mean, not every day you feel 100%. So it's very. It varies, right?
Yeah, it varies.
I mean, one day you feel wonderful, the next day you are not one. I mean,
I felt this when I mean, you shouldn't take the mushrooms because I don't want to take it. I don't feel strong enough.
Yeah, how is your experience? Is it so fantastic every time, or do you feel, is it
No,
different every time? Is it depends on you? Is it on her? How can you describe it?
Really good question.
Yeah.
First of all, again, part of the skill of this practice to become a Nahual is that you know when to take it. I have never had a bad experience, ever. Not even close. And there have been. Why is that? Well, this is a typical situation. Say I'm with, I have a partner, you know, and we're down there in Andalusia. She's my apprentice, okay? So we're saying, well, we're watching the omens. This is one thing you do, is you watch the omens. Well, there were some vultures today that came by, or we saw a snake or something. So you watch the omens, and we're discussing the moment to do this. And then typically we decide, okay, well, Friday evening we're going to do it. Well, it's just like anything else in life. At a certain moment you have to say, you know, we're going out to dinner Friday evening, or we're going to visit your parents. You know, you have to choose a moment.
Yeah.
But when that moment comes, you don't always do it.
Yes.
So I would say 1 in maybe 5 times, or 1 in 4 or 5 times, when you say, for instance, if you came down, you two, and we had some days, and I'm looking at the omens, I'm looking at the moon, I'm saying, okay, we're going to have the quarter moon on Sunday, and this Dakini shift feels like a good shift, so let's do it on Sunday, starting at 6. But when it comes to Sunday, at start at 6, you have to decide again at that moment. You cannot do it just because you said you were going to, because then it will not feel right. So that's part of the skill as well. You know, you really don't know until the last moment if you're going to do it or not. Everything has to be aligned. That's really important point of the practice.
Yeah, it has to feel right when you do it.
Yeah.
Really
And you can't feel bad. You can't feel like, why am I delaying it? Or is there something wrong with me that I said I would do it now, but now I'm postponing it? No, there's nothing wrong with you at all. That shows that you are sober and that you are respectful of what you're doing. You know, you proceed with great care. And sometimes that happens. I've had it happen, as I say, probably 1 in 4 or 5 times. We don't do it at the moment we say we're going to do it.
I remember the first time I came to you in 2014, March. We were, you and I and Jill.
Yeah.
And we decided to do it, but then we just...
That's right.
We didn't do it because
That's right.
it didn't feel
That's
right.
exactly right.
And I was a little bit like, I wanted to do it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I felt that it was a good move because it was not the right time.
That's right.
So sometimes, but then it came later in November for me, the premiere to do it, and it was, I mean, it was amazing. It was really fantastic.
Worth waiting for.
Worth waiting for, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So how about closing this session, because we have other topics. That was my question. Now there are your questions. So we will take a break and then we'll pick it up talking about your questions.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.